What's up guys, it's Bo here again, and welcome to another Bo Changing vlog. It might still be hella dark, I'm still in my flat. In this entry I wanted to talk about something kind of a bit more, well, you know, it still kind of comes from the frame of like, you know, pursuing a life of freedom, you know, because that's my kind of general message, one of my, the messages I have to teach, right? But it's kind of something more economical, I guess you could say, because it is to do with economy, loosely. You know, I'm not an economist, you know, I'm not like a hardcore kind of statistician or anything like that. I'm just an idiot who just talks and like I'm just like a random person who's talking about things that I find important, right? That I'm passionate about. But essentially, in this entry, I want to talk about the kind of idea that basically that the middle class is dying out, right? And this isn't a new idea of mine. Neither is it really a new idea in the world. Like, I think anyone with any kind of modicum of awareness kind of at least intuitively knows this, you know, that like this kind of middle class that we've defined over, like, you know, the previous century, you could say, you know, ever since the Industrial Revolution in the respective countries, you know, from that there kind of was birthed a kind of stratum of people, of the population, that were allocated in like the title of middle class, right? And they were essentially, well, I guess middle class is kind of a bit more modern, you know. You like, from the days of the Industrial Revolution, I guess it was more the working class, right? And I guess there were also kind of there was more diversity in terms of like class structure back then. But you know, essentially, like the middle class is this band of the population that that like works in like a regular income fashion, and aren't exactly poor, but they have kind of they have all of the basic amenities of and you know, commodities that are available to, you know, the average person in modern society, basically. You know, and the middle class, you know, the middle class are well, they're educated, right? You know, the middle class like typically go to school, and the typical kind of middle class thing, you know, I was born in like kind of in a middle class situation, you know, where it's like you kind of go to school, and then the whole point of going to school is that you end up with like a stable job, and you kind of work in employment, like, until one day in the far future when you retire, either with, well, ideally with like money that you've saved yourself, and also like pension that the government promises, or the organization indeed that you work with, that you're loyal to for many years, for many decades potentially, you know, and you kind of retire, and hopefully you have a family, you know, you know, like kind of establishing like a family is also like a major kind of middle class value, you know. A middle class goal, you know, is to get a stable job. So have a good education, get a stable job, meet someone, marry them, start a family, and then like that's basically it. Like, those are the three major things: education, employment, and family, right? And obviously there are kind of like nuances and variations to this, right? You know. Nowadays, like the kind of employment, you know, there are more jobs than ever now. You know, like things like the news, the media, like makes it seem as though like, you know, unemployment is the highest ever, and like I don't know, there's no reason to debate that, but at the same time, like I feel as though like yes, there are many jobs that have probably become obsolete over the years and into like this new kind of decade, this new millennium, I guess you could say, you know, with the advent, with the arrival of like, you know, like the internet, like Web 2.0, and you know, things like that. Like it has really kind of through just like, you know, the kind of the magnificent driving force of capitalism has like really kind of redefined, like really kind of rebuilt, reforged, reformed the kind of employment, like the economy sphere, basically, like, you know, of employment. And so like, you know, many people have many different paths to choose from, like in terms of jobs. So like, you know, if you want a job, you know, like then, well, first of all, like the kind of like from, for example, my parents' era of like thinking, like their kind of ideal thing was like to get into potentially like a lucrative career, which were the big three of law, medicine, and finance, right, or accountancy. Or you can tack science onto that, I guess, but like mostly that's like, yeah, it's still kind of, I guess, pales in comparison to those three that I listed. You know, that was the thing that was kind of prevalent. That was the kind of thinking that was prevalent when my parents were kind of in their prime, let's just say. But nowadays you have much more flexibility. Like I say, there's much more scope in terms of what kind of career path you want, what kind of field you want to get into, and you know, and that's cool, right? That's cool. And you know, like, and I guess like ever since, and like it, and because it's now more difficult, essentially, like to kind of make the transition between well, and this is kind of one argument that I have, like in this entry about why the middle class is dying out. It's like I guess I'm kind of jumping the gun here a bit, but like, so it's getting, you know, over the past decade or more, you know, it has become like increasingly difficult, like, and by increasing I mean like quite a bit more difficult to, like, you know, I think at some point in history, like, you know, you were pretty much guaranteed to have a job when you got into when you graduated from university or whatever college, or, you know, but now it's like, unless you have like a company that is actively like pursuing you, you know, that, you know, you've done an internship with them or something like that, or you have connections that like lead to a job, you know, it's really difficult to get a job. You know, you're competing with so many different people. And like what, you know, what became trendy amongst students, like, you know, over the past decade? The gap year, right? You know, nowadays, like, I think many students, although it really depends, like which kind of level of student we're talking about. You know, there's the really serious students who are practically in it just to get a, you know, to get a good job on the other side of it. But, you know, like many students nowadays who just go to university without a really solid idea of what they want to do, like they go on gap years, you know, or like they spend a lot of time in their 20s just like kind of experimenting and stuff like that. And, you know, that was actually something that appealed to me when, like, before I had, you know, the awareness that I have now, right? And as I say, you know, like because of the way that the world is, you know, with this kind of influx of like avenues of like information, you know, like just the availability of information and stories and things like that, you know, of people like kind of going in whatever direction. You know, it's become such that yeah, people like have more choice than ever nowadays, right? But still, like, the middle class ideal is to be in employments, right? And that, by definition, or well, by my definition, is that you're trying to get into something that is already established, right? That's the kind of idea of it, right? But the thing with that is that a lot of like kind of corporate structures that are collapsing, like now, like from like now, pretty much, because just the a lot of it has to do with like the kind of economical structure that we have in the world, which is based on, you know, it's based on it's based on the kind of the banks, you know, the financial kind of organizations of the world, kind of basically running everything else. And so like there is basically this intense jarring between between you could say like the kind of pure intention of like employees and people like that who actually want to make a difference in the world, or actually want to contribute something in their field of interest or passion, against the kind of like the monetary kind of agenda that is at the, you know, at the kind of like at the very bowels of any business, right? There's always that kind of like intense clash between between contribution and profit, right? And the profit thing, and because, you know, at some point like this economical kind of system was, this economical paradigm was relatively stable, but now it's becoming increasingly unstable because, you know, there are more and more people in the world. More and more of those people are attaining standards that were once, you know, exemplary, you know, at some point in the past, but now the standard that people are coming with is ever increasing, you know. Like almost everyone has a fucking degree now, you know. Almost everyone has a fucking degree, you know. Almost everyone nowadays has a master's, you know, or like a postgraduate education, you know. It's fucking insane, right? And so, you know, there's more and more there's a more and more overcrowded market in terms of people who want to like work for the best companies, and that kind of thing. But then, you know, and a lot of these people are hungry with the, you know, and you know, and because of this kind of this, you know, the internet essentially, you know, the availability of information and anecdotal evidence, you could say, you know, like people are understanding that there's more opportunity than ever nowadays to do whatever the fuck you want. And so like a lot of people are coming into the market with their own perception of contributing, you know. It's like, in a way, like people feel like the biggest disparity between like their inherent wealth in terms of their skill and their passion and their vision, and versus like their kind of like potentially financial lack, you know. Perhaps I'm just speaking for myself, but like it's like you really like nowadays, like, you know, it's like because you know, like there's so much stuff in the world, you know. There's phones and there's computers and like there's cars, and you know, and everyone lives a relatively like comfortable life, but at the same time, you know, like so, and these people are kind of like, because of like, you know, the kind of lagging institutions that we have in the sense that like the institutions that we have, like many of them are like fucking outdated as fuck. Like for example, like our educational institutions, particularly the state-funded ones or like the state-run ones, like, you know, they're so far behind. And I'm just speaking from my own experience, like perhaps it's slightly different now, but like I honestly doubt it though. But like, you know, the educational institutions, like they still have this mentality of like basically their goal is to train youths into employees, essentially. Like they're still like kind of like playing from the position of the middle class dream, the middle class ideal, right? And so that like they're like continually like churning out these kids who probably have like all like, you know, their own kind of amazing ideas based on like the freedom that they of in terms of like the intake of information that they have, because the internet is so like it's so vast and free and uncensored, that they have their own ideas and their own opinions and things like that, and they have opinions from other people, but then they have to go to these institutions that are teaching them these like outdated, you know, obsolete middle class virtues and ideals, and they go into the world without much experience, but they have so many ideas and things like that, and they think that they need a job. Basically they think they need to get a fucking job to be happy, to do anything, right? And the thing they don't realize is that like these things that these companies that they want to get into, you know, these kind of like tried and true like organizations, like they're basically eating themselves out like from the inside, you know, like they're eating themselves out, essentially. That sounds dirty. But you know what I mean. It's like, you know, organizations don't know what the fuck to do, because like a lot of them, like they were built, particularly like the big ones, you know, they were built on these like older economical kind of ideas and virtues and values, to basically operate in the financial system of the world, where it's like, you know, the money is king, essentially, right? Like profit is king in a way. So you know, there's so much kind of like strife in these companies, and at the same time, like these you know, these people are trained to be like to be employees. You know, the message they're getting, even though they have all of these amazing perspectives coming in now, like particularly like the young people of today, it's like they're still being like brainwashed to think that like they have to be employed by someone, or they have to be part of something, because like entrepreneurship is fucking dangerous and risky, right? But you know, but like the thing is, like that is why like basically the middle class is collapsing. It's because these companies are collapsing, because you know, they're basically full of people who kind of go into it with conflicted ideas. They want to contribute, but at the same time they're being told that, like, you know, like they have to play the security thing. And so like and there's more and more people doing this, and so like the security that once existed at that middle class level, where like you just get a job, like it doesn't really even matter if you like it or not, like, but you know, you get that job and you're in that job and it's fine, and you're fine, you're set for the rest of your life. And you know, people are like, oh yeah, that sounds good, right? But like nowadays, like that, that's no longer possible, because there are so many, like it's so oversaturated, the middle class market, meaning people just looking for jobs to be stable in, right? Because they're being dissuaded away from their like implementing their ideas and like, you know, going into entrepreneurship and things like that. And so like, you know, my message in this video is that it's more of a warning, you know, to anyone who's watching this. You know, my thing in these videos, I'm actually talking, I guess I could say I'm a pioneer in this way, even though like I'm definitely not the first to do this or to think about this. Definitely not. You know, there's so many people before me who are doing this. There are so many people who are doing this and doing it better than me, like giving this message, because they're actually living it. I'm just someone who's just talking, who's just on the journey himself. But don't fall into the trap of like the middle class dream, because the middle class dream is a crumbling illusion, right? You know, there no longer exists this economical bubble where you get a job, you start a family, and that's it for life, right? You know, I'm telling you now that if you do that and you fall into that trap, then like, you'll be fucked, right? Because at some point you'll becoming unemployed, you'll be made redundant. Like, it may not happen like now, it may not happen a few years down, but it'll happen at some point. And the longer that you've been in that job or in that field as an employee, the more reliant you are on your kind of position within that field, right? And once that's snatched away from you, you're fucked. Because like, what other experience, what other kind of solidarity that do you have in order to like then try something else, right? What are you going to do about it, right? So instead, what I'm advocating is like to think. If I were to define it, to think as to kind of consider entrepreneurship, right? You know, and entrepreneurship implies like starting a business on your own. But really, like what I'm explaining here kind of goes deeper than that, right? It goes into like the very kind of basis of the way that you design your life. You know, like you know, the middle class ideals of education, employment, and family. Those are completely up to you to decide what to do with, right? You could completely eschew all of these and do things your own way. You know, you don't have to get married. You don't have to have kids. You don't have to get an education. You don't have to get a job, right? As long as you know what the fuck you're doing, right? And I'm not saying any of these things are bad. You know, I'm not saying they're bad at all. It's just that you have to recognize whether or not they work for you, and not even from like a point of view of like, do they resonate with you, but also like, are they effective structures for you? You know, will they work for you? You know, will it work for you to like pay an establishment, an institution to train you, where you don't necessarily have control over what you do towards your learning? You know, you might decide that that's a good thing. You know, I've done that before. I don't necessarily think that it's a good thing for me, but like other people might think so. You know, you might decide that like, you know, well, like, yeah, you like the idea of like starting a family, but like you don't necessarily see yourself like being stuck in that situation for the rest of your life. You know, like you think about it and it's like, well, and because you understand that like, you know, like social connections are very important, and perhaps like kind of imprisoning your, well, I say imprisoning, like that's kind of a strong word, but like kind of like making it so that you're kind of like fixed in that situation may not be may be slightly risky, because like you're kind of cutting yourself off from many potentially rewarding social connections, right? You know, like versus just like, you know, the kind of middle class ideal of like the single family household. You know, and it's really the time where like we need to question these old institutions and structures, and really think, you know, are these really going to help me out? And if they're not, what should I do about it, right? It's time to snap out of the dream, you know. And I'm making it sound kind of really kind of like apocalyptic, but honestly, it's like, you know, I'm just giving you the truth, which is that like the middle class is crumbling, and it's going to be dead pretty soon. Like, I assure you, it's going to be dead within the next 50 years probably. You know, there will no longer be a middle class. You know, anyone who is still kind of clinging on to the hope of sticking to a job, or wherever it is, you know, relying on these pre-established institutions, that really have no kind of like local implication, in the sense that like they're not in alignment with like who you are as a person, also like your environment, let's just say. You know, they're just things that are taught essentially, but they're not something that like they're not things that are necessarily like applicable, like or like kind of effect yeah, applicable to like, you know, your own circumstance and like your like your surroundings, you know, your community. You know, it's just like, oh, we're taught in school that marriage is the way to go, or like that family or like getting a job is the right way to go. You know, and yeah, and so like, you know, we work to escape that, you know, because it's going to crumble soon. But also, it will solve the biggest question, the biggest kind of like war of all, which is the war between profit and contribution, right? You know, yes, like, you know, they those can be aligned. You know, there are a lot of people who are like doing amazing things in the world who are being also remunerated pretty well for it. But for many of us, this is like a rift, right? You know, we have we know that like we have to make money, and like if we have no money, then we're fucked. And that, you know, potentially people out there are willing to take your money forcefully if needed, right? And so you have to protect yourself. But at the same time, like, you know, we don't want to spend our lives like fucking hunting for money, because that's bullshit, right? We have our own beliefs, and we have our own interests and passions that we want to spend time with, and not just like fucking wasting our lives away working for money, right? But if we start to like take this entrepreneurial mindset where, like, you know, we start to design the way that we live, the way that we survive, you know, like generating your own income or your own value, you know, there may be a day when when currency as we know it collapses itself, and then what are we going to do, right? Money is going to go, but your connections and your skills and talents and knowledge and your own the structures that you've built yourself, they will stay, right? Whereas the things that have been given to you, like a job, like the structure of a family or a marriage, or the knowledge that you gained from education, you know, that shit's gonna disappear, right? But like if you start to design your own, you know, your own life essentially, then, you know, you can then shape it in such a way that you get fed, you get looked after, but also and you're contributing value, and you're moving in the direction of your passion. You're feeling inspired every single day. You wake up every single day feeling excited and knowing that you're gonna like, yes, what awaits me today? You know, what amazing thing am I going to make today? What amazing things am I going to share with the world today, with other people, make the world a better place, right? And at the same, and yeah, so you do that, and at the same time you're fed, right? You know, you have a support network. Like, what I'm saying is think outside the box. Watch out for this trap. You know, like I look around me in the place I live, and it's like it's everywhere. You see that people are still like kind of like thinking that, like, you know, oh yeah, go to school, get a good job, and that's it. You know, start a company, and like people have a preconceived notion of that. It's like starting your own company. Whereas like this, you know, you don't have to start a company. Like you can do like as long as you find a way to like deliver value to the people, and then to set up a system that allows them to offer you value back in the form of money or appreciation or whatever it is. Like, yes, you could define it as a business, but it doesn't necessarily have to be defined as a business, right? You know, your preconceived notions of what a business is don't necessarily apply. Or like, you know, break it down. All you need to do is make something or think of something and provide it to other people. You know, like ultimately what it boils down to is exchange of value. You know, what did people used to do when there weren't jobs and like fucking banks and stuff like that? Bank transfers. Like they fucking helped each other out. You know, I scratch my back, you scratch yours, and it's pretty much the same thing, just on a, you know, a more kind of abstract, you know, grand scale. And like what we're finding is that we're going back to that now, because, you know, yes, you know, the industrial revolution and like, you know, the establishment of all these like cool institutions and like money and stuff like that, you know, that was amazing, and like you know, before like we can think of something better, you know, this is pretty cool, you know, that we can like have money, like this universal currency. But at the same time, like we're kind of moving back now towards like a, okay, well, you know, there's money, but like, what if the kind of financial structures collapse? What if currency collapses itself? We have our own structures to exchange value, you know, because money is literally just the physical representation of value, right? There's like a buffer that facilitates the exchange of value, right? But like, and so like, you know, how can we exchange value, even if this kind of like convenient system collapses, this middleman of money collapses? We will still have an established system for ourselves that we can then exchange value with. So cool. Yeah, so that's basically my message. It's been another long entry, but like, you know, build your own structure, build your own life. Don't buy into like, you may have to, you know, like if you're young and you're watching this, you may be in school, like, and there's not much of a choice that you have, you know, well, go through school, you know, you can learn some cool things or whatever. If you're out of school and you're in a job, you know, cool, you're in a job, you know, you're earning money, it's cool. But just keep this in mind, right? You know, like we were all kind of brought up to believe, we were taught to believe that, you know, this is the right way to do things, the safe way to do things. But the reality is that most of this shit is going to crash soon. And the best thing that we could do for ourselves is to start to invest in ourselves and kind of think outside of the box and then plug slightly. And so that when the time comes when things do collapse, when, you know, because the world is evolving, right? And like when the evolution has happened, then we're not destroyed by it, but rather like, you know, it's just us kind of naturally progressing along with the evolution of our society, of our economy, right? So cool, that's my message. I hope it's been insightful. I'm actually surprised at this entry, like, because I'm just riffing this, man. Like, I'm just spewing this shit from the top of my head. But it was cool, like, I covered some cool points in that. And I hope it's been helpful to you. And as always, I hope you're having a good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever it is. You know, keep going for what you believe in and stay strong. This has been Bo, and I will catch you in the next entry. Peace out, guys.